The first type of the form element will be checkbox. So we do the case checkbox and then break. First thing we're going to check if exclamation mark element attribute checked. That means if this specific checkbox is not checked. Then object validation initial validation display, and we pass the ID of the element and the instance of the element. And after this we do valid.push to put the ID of this specific element into our valid array. Now we work on the initial validation display in just a second. I just want to explain you one thing, because as you can see in a few places I've been referring to calling the different methods and properties by using this dot and let's say initial validation display, but in some other I'm using actually object name. And why am I using object name here? The reason why is because we are inside of the different object. We are inside of the jQuery object. We're using each method of the jQuery object. That's why we cannot use this, because that will indicate that we are actually referring to the jQuery object rather than object from which we to which we actually are referring. So rather than using this in this kind of situations, if you're inside of any other object, you have to use the object name. Here it's absolutely fine. We can use this form object because we are outside of this each loop, so we're not inside of the jQuery object here. So just so you know why we're actually using different approaches here. Now name of the method, and after last method, comma, initial validation display, colon, function, 2 parameters, ID, element, 2 brackets, curly brackets. And if we scroll up, now what we're going to do is create the var message, the first thing, and it's going to be element, and the attribute of this element called title. As you may remember, all our inputs, selects, they have title attribute, the ones which are required, and the title attribute simply displays, contains the validation message. So this is where we're getting the validation message from. Then we go for var warning equals, and we create our warning message here, span, with a class, and it's going to be the plus object validation class warning, which is basically the warning name of the class. Then we close it. Let's put the single quote semicolon, and we're going to concatenate this warning plus equals, and we go for message now, then plus single quote and closing span tag single quote semicolon. Now object validation dot form object dot find, and we find in looking for the specific class ID, and then we prepend our warning message to it. So it's going to be as a first item inside of this table cell with this specific class, which is basically represented by the ID of our form element. So that's our input validation. So now if we save the file and preview our index.php, if we leave all the fields empty, obviously for the time being we only validating the checkbox because that's the first method which we actually used, the first type of the form elements that we validated. If we click on the submit button, you can see because it hasn't been checked, our validation is now displayed. If I check the checkbox, I click again, the validation message is gone, untick it, and it's coming back. So let's move to the next video and look at the next type of the form element.